Welcome back, everyone, to the Onslaught Gaming 40K platform. And today we have some exciting new content for you. For those of you who know me on a personal level, know that I've been a long-time World Eaters player. I've never jumped on the bandwagon, never needed to, always wanted to play this army since the very start. They've never had a codex, they've always been a part of the Chaos Space Marine decks, and now, since 9th edition, and today we're going to talk about World Eaters and how to dominate on the tabletop. Are they still good in this meta? Can they still win on the battlefield in 10th edition? Today, we'll find out. All right, my peoples, let's start off with the World Eaters Army rule. If your army faction is World Eaters, at the start of the battle round, you can make a Blessings of Khorne roll. To do so, take 8d6, roll the dice, and you get to activate up to 2 Blessings of Khorne. With these 2 Blessings of Khorne, you have that ability for that entire battle round. All right? There are other ways to add more blessings to your army, so you can actually have 3 via a stratagem, but we'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit later. So as of right now, we have Rage Fueled Invigoration, which adds 2 to your movement characteristic, and this is pretty huge, right? Even for Terminator units that are 5 movement, you can add 2 movement to them, make them 7 movement, and we'll talk about a stratagem later as well that allows your army to advance auto 6. So if you do another blessing that allows your army to do advance and charge, which is called Unbridled Bloodlust, it will give you a 13-inch movement. So it's pretty big. I use it a lot when I'm using my Terminators. I'm going to have to get a couple more Terminators, but they're pretty amazing. So Rage Fueled Invigoration, we already talked about that one. We have Wrathful Devotion. Basically, this just gives you a 6-up Feel No Pain for your entire army. And that's why I really love the Blessings of Khorne. World Eaters are they just have an amazing amount of rules. Their blessings are amazing. This is also on doubles, just like the Rage Fueled Invigoration. So any doubles rolled, you can select 2 of them. Doesn't matter if they're 1s, 2s, whatever they might be. Put them to the side, and now you have a 6-up Feel No Pain for your entire army. Now, it gets a little bit different with Martial Excellence. Martial Excellence is on double 3 pluses. This doesn't mean that you can have a 3 and a 4 and it works. That means you have to have double 3s, double 4s, double 5s, or double 6s. What this does is it gives your melee weapons sustained hits, which can be quite amazing for a close combat army that already wants to hit you. And giving them sustained makes them a hell of a lot better. Total Carnage. This is on double 4 pluses or any triples. And what Double Carnage does, or Total Carnage rather does, is on a 4 plus, don't remove the model that has been destroyed from your army from the table just yet. You get to fight back. This is really, really good for a melee army like World Eaters, especially when you're getting smacked into with armies like Blood Angels, Orcs, things like that. You know, sometimes they get the upper hand. They might take you off guard and hit your squads, but this will allow you to fight back on death. The next one is Warp Blades. So this one is procted on double 5 pluses or any triples. Any triples can be, triple 1s. So this gives your entire army for that battle round lethal hits. So if you proc lethal hits with sustained hits, it's going to be really big. for a World Eater's army. Especially other abilities and datasheet abilities that we're going to talk about later. Once you start stacking this up with other units, it can be very grueling to your opponent and very good for you. And the last one, my favorite, most people's favorite that plays World Eaters, is Unbridled Bloodlust. Unbridled Bloodlust is only on double sixes or triple 4+. So that's triple 4+, triple 5+, or triple 6+. You really don't want to use your triple 6+, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later for this per se, unless you already have Angron on the table. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So Unbridled Bloodlust allows you to advance and charge. So advancing and charging, add double move, right? So add 2 movement. You can get in people's face very, very fast. Especially on search and destroy missions like that. Crucible of Battle, if they're deploying, your enemy is deploying on the line, you can get in there very fast. And that's what you want to do with World Eaters. Their threat range is probably by far the largest when it comes to a melee army. So try to take advantage of that. Make sure that you're looking at all of your blessings of Kharn and appropriately stacking all of your abilities. Next one is the Detachment Rule. So the Detachment Rule is, if this unit made a charge move this turn, until the end of the phase, add 1 to the strength and attack characteristics of melee weapons equipped by models in that unit. And this is for all World Eater units, including Spawn. People think the Spawns are demons and things like that, but this applies to all of them. This applies to Maulerfiends, which is really, really good. Maulerfiends have a bunch of attacks, and obviously applies to everything else, including Jakhals. World Eaters, Berzerker Warband Stratagems. So World Eaters have some of the best stratagems in the game, in my opinion. I think that they really did a great job, them being Games Workshop, making this index very flavorful. That's really why I like playing a lot of Xenos and Chaos armies. They usually hit the lore a lot better. So the first one we have is Gory Massacre. So 1 World Eaters unit from your army that made a charge move this turn and destroyed 1 or more enemy units this phase, and that's in the fight phase. In your opponent's next command phase, each enemy unit within 6 inches of your unit must take a Battle Shock test. If the unit taking the test is below half strength, subtract 1 from the test. Enemy units affected by this stratagem do not need to take any other Battle Shock tests in the same phase. So basically, you force them to take a Battle Shock in that phase. They obviously can't do it again if they're below half strength. But this is very big, especially going into armies that are low leadership, like Orcs, armies like that, right? Not super amazing against Marines. They usually have a pretty decent leadership. But armies like Orcs, you can affect them a lot. Really remove armies from holding objectives, which is really big. So don't forget, this can take away armies from holding objectives. Remember, you score at the end of the phase. So if you can Battle Shock them and make them 0 OC, with this stratagem, you take them away from holding that objective marker. So you can take away points from your opponent. The next one is For the Blood God. Oh, gotta love it as a World Eaters player. This is named appropriately. So when is this? In the fight phase, just after a World Eaters unit from your army destroyed an enemy unit. That World Eaters unit, make a Blessings of a Kharn roll. You can use the results of this roll to activate 1 Blessings of Kharn. So this is what we were talking about before, right? You can get multiple blessings. 2 is not the maximum that you can get. Actually, if you use this stratagem after you've destroyed a unit, you get another Blessings of the Kharn, right? Usually when I proc this, right, let's just say that I started off with +2 movement and advance and charge. I'll take 6 up, feel no pain, right? Or if I feel like I'm going to be threatened by a melee army, I'll take fight on death. Or if I feel like I need to really get into that unit and fight with the remaining units, I'll do sustained hits, right? And that'll help the remaining units in the army. It won't help the unit that destroyed that unit that gave you this ability or that additional blessing roll, right? But it'll help everything else. So if you're really fighting into something that's really beefy, you want to make sure to apply this stratagem, and it's only 1 CP. The next stratagem is for the Skull Throne. When is this? In the fight phase. One World Eater's unit from your army that has not been selected to fight this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes a melee attack that targets a character, monster, or vehicle unit. So that's not model. That means if some unit has a character in it, it's a character unit, right? Add 1 to the wound roll. This is huge, right? For a melee army. So you want to get smack. You want to smack them. Get in there as quick as possible. Use your advance and charge +2 movement. Hopefully, you've already fought something else and killed it and procted maybe sustained hits. And now you're at +1 to wound. Very, very big. So the next one we have is Kharn Cares Not. When does this happen? In the fight phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. One World Eater's unit from your army that was selected as the target of 1 or more of the enemy unit's attacks. Until the end of the phase, each time an attack targets your unit, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack. So this is really big. And if you stack this together with Feel No Pain, Exalted get a 5-up Feel No Pain, Spawn get a 4-up Feel No Pain, if you have the Feel No Pain blessings procted, right? This can help you immensely. That way, you have high potential of survivability throughout that phase and throughout that combat. On to the next page of stratagems. So that was the first 4. Here are the last 2. You have Blood Offering. When does this happen? Any phase. One World Eater's unit from your army that was just destroyed, and it was within range of an objective marker you control. So you got to make sure that you have already controlled it. You can use this stratagem on that unit even though it's just destroyed. That objective marker remains under your control even if you have no models within range of it until your opponent controls it at the start or end of any turn. So you're getting sticky objectives, right? This allows you the ability to hopefully still stack up on your primary points. So if you're playing Take and Hold, this should help you with that. If you're playing any other type of secondaries that where you have to control it, this will apply to that as well. Next stratagem is Apoplectic Frenzy. So when does this happen? Your movement phase. The target is one World Eater's unit from your army that has not been selected to move this phase. Until the end of the phase, if your unit advances, do not make an advance roll for it. Instead, until the end of the phase, add 6 to the move characteristic of models in that unit. This is huge, right? So if you have a fat brick of Exalted Eightbound, 6 of them, you can apply that to that unit, especially if you have the Lord Invocatus that gave them a 6-inch scout move before the game started. They naturally have a 9-inch movement. If you also took the Blessings roll for +2 movement and you have advance and charge, with this applied to it, your threat range is huge. Your threat range is actually 23 inches, not including your charge. Now on to enhancements. If you're using the Berzerker Warband Detachment Rule, you can use these Berzerker Warband enhancements. First one up, Favorite of Khorne. World Eater's model only, so it can only be used on a single model. Once per battle, when you make a Blessings of Khorne roll, before doing anything else, the bearer can use this enhancement. If it does, discard all of the dice from that roll and make a new Blessings of Khorne roll. This new roll does not count as a reroll, so any rules that enable you to reroll or manipulate individual dice, ergo, the icon of Kharn still can be used. So, if you're running Jakhals and you're running Berzerkers, you roll this first. Then you can re-roll any additional dice, like if you want to get Angron back because he's dead in the game, right? Or if you want to get that advance in charge to really help you out for that turn. So there's a lot of ways of manipulation, and taking favorite of a Kharn, it's only once per game now. It used to be a little bit different where you can do it multiple times, but it was obnoxious where you can bring Angron back multiple times. It was very crazy, and GW nerfed that down very quickly. But it's still great. It still has a lot of utility. I usually put it on a Warlord on Juggernaut, or I put it on a Mo, which is the Master of Execution. You can put it on just about any of those two characters. You can't put it on any epic characters like Angron or Kharn, things like that. You can put it on a Daemon Prince as well, but it's usually best suited on a Chaos Warlord or World Eaters Warlord on Juggernaut. They're very resilient. They're not going to get killed that fast, so you can actually use this throughout the game when you need it. Next one up is the Berzerker Glaive. So just like what we're talking about, the favorite of Kharn, this can really be applied to any of those characters, the World Eaters, Lord on Juggernaut, the Mo, which is the World Eater's Master of Executions, and the Daemon Prince as well. I usually put the Glaive, and a lot of people put the Glaive on the Mo, Master of Executions. What this does is it allows you one additional attack, which is pretty big because you get one additional attack anyways on the charge, right? So that's stacked, so you get +2 attacks. And you get +1 damage as well. Really big, and you're going to see later on when I start talking about the Master of Executions, he's 2 flat damage without this Glaive. You give him this Glaive, he's 3 flat damage. He also has Precision, which allows him to target and pick out characters as long as he has line of sight to those characters. So putting down 3 damage on characters is really big. Next one up is Battle Lust. World Eaters model only, so a single model can have this. You can select the bearer's unit for the Heroic Intervention Stratagem for 0 CP, and can do so even if you've already targeted a different unit with the stratagem this phase. This is probably the least used enhancement out of all of them. It's not that it doesn't have any utility. It has great value to it, I think, just not as much as everything else we're going to talk about, especially on the helm. But it's really good if you put it into a Mo, because he gives the unit fight first. And if a unit charges something close to one of your units and they didn't want to charge your unit because of fight first, you can heroically intervene, still fight first, and get to smack that unit before they smack the other unit they charged. So the last one we have is Helm of Brazen Ire. A single World Eaters model can have this. Each time an attack is allocated to the bearer, have the damage characteristic of that attack. This is huge, right? So if something is 4 damage flat, just like Gazgul is, you'll only take 2 of that damage. Maybe. That's not to mention that if you're taking one of your Blessings of the Kharn roll, right, for the 6-up Feel No Pain, or for a +1 to your Feel No Pain, rather, right, then you can potentially stop all of those damages if you roll your Feel No Pain as well. So this can be pretty big depending on who you put it on. Usually you see this put on a Daemon Prince. It really helps out that Daemon Prince a lot, so it doesn't take death immediately, especially last cannon, shots, things like that. Things running into it with 2 damage, now it's only going to take 1 damage. So the helm is pretty amazing. It's probably the 3rd favored. Mostly the favorite of Kharn is probably the 2nd. Berzerker Glaive is the 1st, and Battle Lust is usually the last. But hey, you might have a different play style. You might want something else in your army because you want to tech into maybe heroic interventions because you have a lot of berserkers. So up first for data sheets, Big Daddy Primarch himself, Mr. Angry Ron, Angron. He is mostly an auto-include. 90% of the time, you're going to see World Eater's army with Angron. He's absolutely amazing with a toughness of 11, 16 wounds, 2+ save, 14 movement. So if you use that stratagem to give him an auto advance of 6, he's going at 20 inches already. You use the blessing of Kharn roll for +2 movement, he's moving at 22 inches, lightning speed. So most of the time, no man's land is 20 inches long. He's going to jump over no man's land with no problems whatsoever. So why is he amazing? So he has this Semnaris Spine Grinder with strike and sweep. All right. So he gets 8 attacks, weapon skill 2, strength 16, AP 4, D6 +2 damage. As you know, as a World Eaters player, because of our Detachment Rule, we get +1 attack. So he goes up to 9 attacks, +1 strength. So he goes up to 17 strength, right? And on his sweep, he goes up to 19 crazy amount of attacks. Strength 9, AP 2, 2 damage. He also has the glorious Wrathful Presence ability. All 3 of them being aura abilities, so you can share with other units in your army. These are 3 of some of the most amazing aura abilities in the game, in my opinion. The first one up is Glorious Bloodletting. While a friendly World Eaters unit is within 6 inches of this model, each time a charge roll is made for that unit, add 1 to the charge roll. So obviously this affects him as well. You don't actually have to use it on other units or have units around you to actually have this applied to Angron. So if Angron is moving 22 inches like we talked about, stacking the blessings of the Kharn roll with the +2 movement and the stratagem for auto 6 advance, +1 to the charge, it's going to be amazing as well. So you're going to get smacking very quickly. Next Wrathful Presence ability, once again another aura ability. While a friendly World Eaters unit is below its starting strength, within 6 inches of this model, add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons equipped by models in that unit. For the purposes of this ability, if a unit has a starting strength of 1, it is considered to be below starting strength while it has lost 1 or more wounds. So this can be very big, and I'm glad that this isn't half strength, right, or below half strength, because then at that point, you're basically dead anyways. But because it's below starting strength, so if you've killed off, or your enemy has killed off 1 8-bound model out of your 6 brick, right, you can go next to Angron, get that +1 attack, and then you're going to have +2 on the charge, plus whatever is base for those particular units, right? Exalted Eightbound can have around 5 attacks base, +2 for 7. So that can get pretty crazy really fast when you have 6 models with 5 attacks base with their eviscerators, hitting on 2s, strength 6, strength 7 on a charge, AP 2, 2 damage. That's a lot of attacks coming from that Exalted Eightbound unit. Next one is the Righteous Slaughterer. While a friendly World Eaters unit is within 6 inches of this model, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, you can re-roll the hit roll. Now, this is probably the one that I use most, right? Especially when you're around Berzerkers or regular 8-bound, because Berzerkers hit on 3s, regular 8-bound hit on 3s. Sometimes 1s and 2s do appear, especially with all of those attacks the Berzerkers have. How many attacks you say? Well, you get 50 if you don't have any eviscerators in the unit, right? And a lot of people in a 10 brick unit, a lot of people like to take 2 eviscerators. So you usually get around 48 attacks with 2 eviscerators. That's big. Very, very big, right? So now you're smacking with almost 50 attacks with your Berzerkers with full rerolls to hit. And you're going to be +1 strength, so you're going to be 6 strength with the chain blades, strength 9 with the eviscerators, and you're going to delete just about any single unit you smack into. You can also use it on Angron as well. All of these auras apply to him as well, so for all of his that are hitting on 2s, if you pop any 1s, you get to re-roll that. And if you're feeling froggy and you have a blessing up with sustained hits, you can proc for more 6s, right? So hopefully you get more 6s, and then you get more hits and attacks. Berserker units can really shred through just about everything in the game. They can really punch up. They can get +1 to wound against vehicles, monsters, and character units. So even if you're fighting against those things, you might end up wounding on 4s, maybe 5s, right? Depending who they are. If they're toughness 12, yeah, you're going to end up wounding on 5s, but everything else, you're going to end up wounding on 4s. So pretty amazing. 8-bound, especially with Chain Fist. So Exalted 8-bound with Chain Fist are going to basically wound everything on 2s with that, right? Full rerolls. All of those attacks. So you're going to have 7 attacks for 6 dudes. So you're going to have 42 attacks, full rerolls, sustained hits, wounding on 2s. Pretty nasty, really fast. That will delete just about anything in the game. So he also comes with Deadly Demise D6 when he's destroyed. Make sure you don't get him destroyed. And Deep Strike. He also has Reborn in Blood. So each time you make a Blessings of the Khorne roll, if this model is destroyed, you can use a 666, and this is what we were talking about previous, right? Trying to get that extra blessing roll, trying to bring back Angron, trying to manipulate all of your icons of Khorne to bring back Angron. This is really when all of that is going to benefit, when you want to bring Angron back. Because bringing Angron back is one of the angriest moments, all pun intended, for opponents to see him come back at full health and wreak havoc. So 666, if you do, this model is no longer destroyed and is placed in a reserve with his full wounds remaining. He also has the Wrathful Presence that we already talked about. All right. So all 3 of those aura abilities that he gets. As always, 1 to 6 wounds remaining. He takes a slight little nerf, so subtract 1 to hit. And has an amazing invulnerable save of 4 up. And on the back side of his data sheet, just for those of you who are not aware, if this model is in your army, it must be your warlord at all times. All right, so you can't have another character or epic character be your warlord. Angron must be your warlord. Here goes another amazing epic character. This dude is a monster in the melee world. He's absolutely amazing. He is flat 3 damage for the Gore Child, 8 attacks, 9 attacks on a charge, hitting on 2s, strength 7 on the charge, AP 2. He smacks like a semi-truck. He also has a Kharn's plasma pistol. Nobody usually uses it, even though it doesn't have hazardous, which is really good. It can plink off like 1 Marine, things like that, right? Hits on a 2, so he shoots very well. Strength 8, AP 3, 2 damage flat. So it has its utilities. It can kill 1 guy, but hopefully it's not a guy to make your charge a little bit further, because this is what you really want him for. You really It's 50-50. You really don't want to plug him into a unit most of the time, because if you're out in the open and you're just walking around not in a vehicle, he could start killing your own Berzerkers off, things like that. Usually a lot of people take him in a Rhino that already has 10 Berzerkers in it with a Master of Executions attached to it, because the Rhino can transport 12. So the Mo with 10 Berzerkers is 11, and then you add him for the 12th guy. And he just hops out and just eats an entire unit by himself. Kharn is absolutely amazing. He is great in the index. Hopefully he continues to be great in the codex whenever that drops out. He can lead units, like I said, but you really want to protect the units that he's with, right? And you want to really position it, and it's all about timing on when you want to hop him out of the vehicles, because he might start killing your own dudes. So he has Legendary Killer. While this model is leading a unit, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, reroll a hit roll of 1 and wound roll of 1, which is amazing, right? So if you're running around with Berzerkers, you get to also reroll wound rolls of 1 if you have Angron next to you. If you don't have Angron next to you, then you're going to hit on 3s, rerolling 1s, rerolling wound rolls of 1 as well. So that can help out a Berzerker unit. The next ability is the Betrayer. At the end of your charge phase, if this model is leading a unit and that unit is not within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units, you must take a leadership test for this model. If that test has failed, 1 bodyguard model of your choice in that unit is destroyed. So this is what I was talking about, right? If you're not fighting with Kharn, he gets pissed and he wants to start killing his own dudes off. So you want to make sure that you either get stuck in at all times and you're really fighting all the time with him, or run him by himself so he can't inflict any damage on your own army. Losing 1 guy or 2 throughout the game is probably really not that big, but it can be the difference maker sometimes when you're smacking with 5 attacks with Berzerkers, right? So it's really up to you how you want to do it. I usually take them the way that I was telling you. You know, I put a Mo attached to some Berzerkers, and then he's in there with them by himself, and then he just hops out by himself, and he just eats just about anything on the table with that flat 3 damage. And if you proc it with sustained hits as well, oh my gosh, like he can be a whirlwind of just chewing through all types of units. He also gets the Berzerker Frenzy. If this model is destroyed by a melee attack, if it has not fought this phase, do not remove it from play. It can fight after the attacking model's unit has finished making its attacks, and then it's removed. So just a little tip and trick here. Your enemy unit does not get to consolidate after their attack. You actually get to fight, so they don't get to run away and not allowing Kharn to smack you back in return with this ability, right? And it's really good. So then now you don't have to use your blessings of the Kharn roll or ability rather, for him to fight on death on a 4-up. He has it innately, which is a lot better than having to roll a die. And he will kill and delete a unit in return just about every single time. He also has a 4+ Invo. And on the back of his card, this model can be attached to the following units, which is just Kharn Berzerkers. All right. Next Datasheet. Another amazing character. He's not a. He is an epic character. Amazing piece as well. He is Lord Invocatus. He is mostly an auto-include if you're taking Exalted Eightbound. 99% of the time, you're going to see this model on the tabletop. He's not quite super effective in close combat. He can be with sustained hits, things like that. You really don't want to smack him into super resilient, high toughness units. You run into some scouts with him. If you have him attached to something, usually a lot of people don't. I never attach him to anything. He's usually running around by himself. He can definitely delete like a 5-man unit of scouts most of the time. So his ranged weapon is a bolt pistol. Really nothing amazing. It's just strength 4, 0 AP, 1 damage, hitting on 2s, 1 shot. His melee weapons is where it gets a lot better. He has the Coward's Bane with Dev Wounds, right? So he gets 8 attacks on the charge, hitting on 2, strength 7, -2, 2 damage, all on the charge. All right. So like I said, can potentially take out a Scout, Primaris unit, Votank, Xenos, things like that. You're not going to kill a 10-man brick of Orc Boys, things like that. You do also have the Juggernaut's Bladed Horn from the Juggernaut itself. It's just 4 extra attacks, and it has Lance as well. It also goes up to Strength 7, but it's only AP 1, 2 damage flat, and it's only hitting on 3s, right? So the Lance helps out a little bit with that Strength 7. So a lot of things you might be wounding on 2s, as opposed to the Coward's Bane from Lord Invo himself. He might not wound on 2s, but that Juggernaut should be wounding just about everything with the toughness of 6 or less on 2s, right? So he has the leadership ability too, and this is what we were talking about previously. He has Scout 6, so he has it himself, so he can Scout 6 himself as well. He has the counterattacks ability while this model is leading a unit. That unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back. World leaders really don't shoot. I mean, you want to declare a charge just so you can get your charging bonus again, right? That's really what you're going to use it for. Everything that you're running with is not going to really shoot. I mean, if you can attach it to Forgefiends or something like that, it would be super amazing. But you can't. So you can only attach these to Berzerkers and Eightbound, and we'll see that on the other side of the page. Road of 8 Bloody Steps. At the start of the battle, before any moves are made using the Scout's ability, you can select up to 2 friendly World Eaters infantry units within 6 inches of this model. Until the end of the battle, all models in a selected unit have the Scout 6 ability. Very strong. I use this all the time for my Exalted Eightbound that don't have Scout 6 innately, like the regular Eightbound, and we're going to see that a little bit later once we go down the data sheets. Very powerful. That's the way I was giving you the math earlier about Exalted Eightbound. If you get that 6-inch movement with their 9-inch movement plus 2 additional movement from the blessings, right? You're already talking about 17 inches and an auto 6. If you use it on a brick of 3 or 6, it really doesn't matter. But usually it's used on a brick of 6. You have 23 inches of movement, right? Very, very big. You really can't hide from that. The threat range is amazing. And people are really just going to have to respect your threat range when you're playing World Eaters, especially when they see the Lord Invo and he's giving the Scout ability to some Exalted Eightbound. Also has a 4+ invulnerable save. And he can be attached to Eightbound, Exalted Eightbound, and Berzerkers. Then we have up the World Eater's Daemon Prince. So this is the one without any wings. So this one cannot fly. This one has the Infernal Cannon for ranged weapons. It has 3 attacks, hitting on 2, strength 5, AP 1, 2 damage, 24-inch range. Once again, like Kharn's pistol, right? This has 3 attacks. Maybe you can kill off 3 Marines, something like that. 3 Votank, 3 Orcs. Not super big, but if you're using it to help something else shoot and whittle down units, and you have maybe Khorne Berzerkers that are already super close and you really can't fail a charge, that can help out with that. You really don't want to get your DP that close most of the time, within 24 inches, even though that's a big threat range. But it can help out and plink some wounds off, right? The big help is the melee weapons. So he has the Hellforged weapon, both strike and sweep. So the strike is 7 attacks, with the World Eater's Detachment ability on the charge. Weapon skill 2, strength 11, AP 2, damage 3. So big damage, big smack. Remember we were talking about that enhancement earlier. You can give him damage 4, potentially, right? So he can get really beefy and smack really, really hard. He can also go up to 8 attacks with that because it gives you +1 attack and +1 damage. So you can put it onto this character if you want to do that. He usually gets shot very quickly, right? He's only toughness 10. He's got a 2-up save, yes, indeed. But he's only 10 wounds. He's only 8 movement. You can, yes, put that additional 2 movement on him and give him an auto advance of 6 to get stuck into certain units. But when you look at the points price of him, you can probably use, it's probably best used and suited in other units, right? And that's the only downside to him. I think his points are a little bit too high, and doesn't the ROI is really not respectable. So he has the Infernal Fortitude aura. While a friendly World Eater's infantry unit is within 6 inches of this model, models in that unit have a 5+ invul, unless they already have a 5+ invul, in which case they have a 4+ invul. So this can be very helpful. I've seen a lot of people use these like on Eightbound. Both Eightbound having a 5+ invulnerable save drops them down to a 4+ invulnerable save, makes them super resilient. But a lot of people are usually going to want to target your Daemon Prince. But who am I to say that if you position him appropriately, maybe you have a Land Raider, maybe you have a Rhino that you're hiding him behind, right? Maybe he doesn't get shot. But it's all about positioning and strategizing the right movements. And also, he has Devastating Assault. Each time this model makes a charge move until the end of the turn, its Hellforged weapons has the Devastating Wounds ability, which is very strong, right? Wish he had anti-something so he can proc all those dev wounds, but he doesn't. But if you take the enhancement on him and he's flat 4 damage, then you're doing flat 4 mortal wounds from dev wounds to your enemy units, right? He also has a 4+ invul. And this model cannot be attached to anything. All right, next data sheet is the Daemon Prince with wings. This one also has the Infernal Cannon, has the same strike and sweep weapons as the one without wings. You can also add the Berserker Glaive to this one, just like the other one, the enhancement, to make him 4 damage for his strikes and 2 damage for his sweeps. The abilities is Deadly Demise D3, just like the other one. This one does, though, have Deep Strike. He has the Bloodied Terror. At the start of the fight phase, each enemy unit within engagement range of this model must take a Battle Shock test, which can be pretty big if you put it together with the Stratagem. The Stratagem Gory Massacre. So you can really affect enemy units from holding objectives and things like that. Oath to Kharn. At the start of the battle, select one unit from your opponent's army to be this model's sworn foe. Each time this model makes an attack that targets that sworn foe, you can reroll the hit roll and reroll the wound roll, so full rerolls. If at the end of the battle that sworn foe has not been destroyed, this model is destroyed. So that can be pretty big. Great ability. Usually most people don't take the winged one. They take the one without wings. He has the ability to buff your army. This one is more of a fight piece, and you can use him to go out there and really wreak havoc on your enemy units. So on the flip side, he cannot be attached to anything. So this is the Lord on Juggernaut. He also has a plasma pistol, but he does get the hazardous for supercharging it, unlike Kharn. So he has 2 profiles, 1 hitting on 2, strength 7, AP 2, 1 damage. The supercharge is hazardous. hitting on 2, strength 8, AP 3, 2 damage. Sometimes you want to use this, sometimes you don't. Remember, hazardous to a character is 3 wounds, so that can be pretty tough for a model that only has 7. Also, he has the Exalted Chainblade. So in the charge, he gets 8 attacks, strength 7, hitting on 2s, AP 1, 2 damage. You can also give him the Berserker Glaive for this model, so he can go up to 3 damage, which is sometimes very nice because he's not an epic character, but his AP is very low. So he's really, most of the time, he's not going to kill a lot of things, right? Also, the Juggernaut's Bladed Horn, extra attacks, and Lance. It does not get an additional attack because it's extra attacks. So it's 4 normally, hitting on 3s. Strength 7 on the charge, AP 1, 2 damage as well. He also gets the Aggressive Advance ability. While this model is leading a unit, you can re-roll any or all of the following rolls made for that unit. Advance rolls, charge rolls, blood search rolls. See Berzerker Corns for that rule. He also has the Bloody Stampede. Each time this model's unit ends a charge move, select one enemy unit within engagement range of this model and roll 1d6 on a 2-3. That enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. On a 4-5, the enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. On a 6, D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. So that can be very big, especially if you roll that 6, right? That's a whole lot of mortal wounds. So on average, you're probably going to do 5 mortal wounds if you roll that 6. On average, with a 4-5, you're probably going to do 2 mortal wounds. You'll probably kill 1 Primaris Marine, 1 Scout, couple of Orcs, Votan, things like that, right? Elves, whatnot. He also has a 4+ invulnerable save. And he can be attached to Eightbound, Exalted Eightbound, and Kharn Berzerkers. Next data sheet up is the amazing Mo, Master of Executions. So he has a ranged weapon, bolt pistol, range 12, 1 shot, hits on 3, strength 4, 0 AP, and 1 damage. That's really only useful when you're attacking like a cultist model and he's the last one left. The melee weapons is where it gets really crazy. He has the Axe of Dismemberment. So this has devastating wounds and precision, which means you can pick out characters as long as you have line of sight. And you're going to see an ability that he has against characters. But this thing has 6 attacks on the charge, hits on 2s, strength 8, AP 2, 2 damage. Now, if you take the Berserker Glaive with him, he goes up to 7 attacks on the charge, still strength 8, 3 damage. And on top of that, he has the Murderous Swing ability. So each time this model makes a melee attack that targets a character unit, you can reroll the hit roll and wound roll. So full rerolls against that target character that you're trying to kill. And if you proc dev wounds, you're really going to kill that character very, very, very fast. All right? So he's an amazing character. But also, that's not it. He has the Trophy Taker. While this model is leading a unit, models in that unit have the Fight First ability. So you're going to F around and find out that if you charge this unit with 10 Berzerkers, he's going to fight first with his unit. The entire unit is going to fight first. And then he might pick out your character so he can take away all of your abilities, any leading abilities, or whatever you might have. And then when you swing back, you no longer have those abilities. So let's say, for example, if you have a Pain Boy, right, and a bunch of boys want to swing into you, you fight first, you kill that Pain Boy, and when he fights into you, he no longer has Feel No Pain, he no longer has those abilities, especially if he had a War Boss in there too, and you kill that War Boss instead, and it gave you like +1 to hit. So he can definitely destroy a lot of your plans and a lot of your abilities. Also, like what we're talking about earlier, right? If you use Battle Lust and take that enhancement instead of the Berzerker Glaive, You can heroically intervene into a unit with that fight first ability and really throw a monkey wrench in your opponent's plans, right? So there's a lot of ways to really run them. You can take Battle Lust, or you can take the Berserker Glaive. Most people and myself take him with the Berserker Glaive, but he's pretty amazing for what he does entirely. He can only be attached to Berzerkers. Next datasheet, one of the best melee, if not the best melee power armor Marines, Chaos Marines that is, right, in the game. I think most of the time, Blood Angels probably have them in contention, might be right up with them, but they're definitely one of the strongest, especially with 4 attacks, 5 attacks on the charge. So these guys can be equipped with plasma pistols, so you can take 2 in a 10-man brick, or 1 in 5. They all take bolt pistols. We all know what plasma pistols and bolt pistols do. The Berserker chain blades are 4 attacks, 5 attacks on the charge, hitting on 3, strength 6 on the charge, AP 1, 1 damage. The Coronate Eviscerators are 3 attacks, 4 attacks on the charge, hitting on 3s, strength 8, 9 strength on the charge, AP 2, 2 damage flat. And this is the unit where everybody gets that rule from, where they talk about Blood Surge. This is it, right? So they have the ability, if they choose, so they don't have to, but if they choose, if you kill a model in their unit, right, in the shooting phase, they can move and have to move. So if they move, they have to move as close as possible to that enemy unit. But you get to roll a d6 to do it. And you can go into engagement range. So this is really big. So if you have a Mo attached to your unit with these Khorne Berzerkers with fight first, and you move into engagement range with a Blood Surge, you get to fight first in the fight phase. All right? Very big, amazing ability. Just remember that if you're battle shocked, you cannot Blood Surge. And they can take the icon of Khorne. So that allows you to manipulate dice after the fact of the favorite of Khorne. If you don't have the favorite of Khorne, you can still try to manipulate dice by re-rolling one of those dice, as long as you're on an objective that you control. And that's the back of the card. On to the next data sheet. So it's Jakhals. These Jakhals have a 6-inch movement, toughness 3, 6 up save, 1 wound, leadership 7, 1 OC. They all have auto pistols. We all know what auto pistols do. Most of them have the Jackal chain blades with a sustained hits 1, 3 attacks on the charge, hitting on 4s, strength 4 on the charge, 0 AP, 1 damage. The Dishonored chain blades sustained hits 1 as well, and none of these sustained hits stack with your blessings. So just remember to understand that, right? He has 4 attacks on the charge, hitting on 4s, strength 5, 0 AP, 1 damage. The Mauler chain blade sustained hits 1, 3 hits on a charge, hitting on 5s, strength 6, AP 1, 2 damage flat. And then the Skull Smasher. So this is 5 attacks on a charge, hitting on 4s, strength 5, AP 1, 2 damage. So that can really help out. This unit of roided out Jakhals, which are basically just cultists, are pretty amazing in close combat, way better than cultists in close combat. They also have a Feel No Pain 6-up. So if you use the Blessing roll for Feel No Pain, these guys will get a 5-up Feel No Pain. They also have the Objective Ravaged. At the end of your command phase, if this unit is within range of an objective marker you control, that objective marker remains under your control, even if you have no models within range of it, until your opponent controls it at the start of any turn. All right? So essentially, you just get sticky objectives, which is pretty amazing, especially if your enemy doesn't have any deep striking units. You can just sticky a unit, sticky an objective marker, run away from it, and try to do it to another objective marker. They also come with the icon. If you take it, make sure to always take that war gear, and that helps you out with manipulating dice rolls to bring back that Angron. Back of the card, nothing super special. And remember, everyone, this is on the Warhammer community download section, so you can download this entire index yourself. I just wanted to make sure that I break down everything to you and tell you my tidbits and tricks on how I use them. So here's another amazing unit that a lot of people don't like to use, but there are some sneaky abilities with them, especially once you start stacking up certain things, right? So is the World Eaters Terminator Squad. Super resilient because they're Terminators, right? So they only have a 5-inch movement, but if you use your blessing for +2 movement, they go up to 7. Also, if you have advance and charge on, or just if you're advancing, right, you just want to get on an objective marker, you can do an auto 6 for a fat brick of 10 or 5 or whatever you have in your unit. They're T5, 2+ save, 3 wounds each, 6 leadership, and 1 OC. Just like any Terminator squad, they are kitted out with combi bolters, combi weapons, heavy flamers, and Reaper autocannons. They also have for melee accursed weapons, paired accursed weapons, chain fist, and power fist. They have the deep strike ability, and this is where we're going to talk about stacking abilities. Each time a model in this unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll if it is below its starting strength, and add 1 to the wound roll if it is below its half strength, right? So this is where this can get pretty gnarly, all right? So +1 to hit. If you have Angron around, you're going to basically hit everything except for the chain fist on 2s, re-rolling 1s, all right? If you also have the blessing up for sustained hits, you're going to get sustained hits hitting on 2s, re-roll 1s. And if you're below half strength, you're going to re-roll 1s to wound. But I would advise you to probably just put a regular 8-bound unit next to them. You can get that same ability without being more than half depleted. And then you can benefit off of that re-roll 1s. 8-bound affect your units and basically allow you to re-roll 1s, which is really amazing. I use them on Exalted 8-bound all the time, so I run them in packs like a brother and little brother pack, where they run together and they just buff each other. But this can really stack, get really crazy, really fast. Also, this unit can be very, very fast. So if your opponent is sitting back thinking that you have, let's just say, for example, you have 3 bricks of these, you really don't have like an Angron or any 8-bound or any fast units, Berzerkers and things like that, and Rhinos, and you just have 30 of these, they can really threaten the table state very, very fast. You win either way. If your opponent thinks that, hey, their Terminators are slow, they're really not going to affect me, and they go up to the deployment zone line to deploy their entire army, or even if they're scared of World Eaters and deploy all the way back, you can use the opportunity that if they deploy all the way back, you can take objectives, sit on them, and be super resilient and not die to things like that, especially if you have Feel No Pain propped up, right? Or they can run out there and you can throw a lot of abilities on these units to really smack back. They don't hit as hard as anything else in the World Eaters army. They hit more like 3 Exalted or 3 regular 8-bound guys, right? They really don't punch up as well. They're very, very expensive for a 10-man Terminator squad as well. So you got to be very careful. They're more resilient than anything else. They have a 4+ invul, and if you put a 6 up Feel No Pain, they could be super resilient. Put them in cover, take away one of those APs and give you some cover ability, right? So that can really help you out. But I think they're an amazing piece. Try them out. I think you'll be very happy with them. It's obviously going to be a different play style. You're probably going to play more of the mid board, but they're still pretty great. And this is all their war gear options. Now on to some of the best units in the World Eaters and the most used, right? So 8-bound, movement of 9, which is astronomical. Toughness 6, save 3 up, 3 wounds, leadership 6, 1 OC. So these guys don't shoot whatsoever. They have 8-bound eviscerators, 6 attacks on 6 attacks naturally, 7 attacks on the charge, hitting on 3s, strength 6 on the charge, AP 2, 2 damage flat. Nobody ever takes heavy chain glaive because it's only 1 damage, so not super amazing unless the meta changes to something where it's mostly horde and 1 wound models, but nobody really takes that. Lacerators are amazing as well. One of the best tech-in pieces of the game because we don't have a lot of damage 3 except for our characters. So the Lacerator is 5 attacks on the charge, hitting on 3, strength 10, AP 2, 3 damage flat, which is really, really good. So for those pesky units, like the Catans and things like that have damage, you're still going to take 2 damage from this. It really sucks when you smack them with some Exalted Eightbound and they only do 1 damage for everything going into the Catans. So it's really nice to have one of these extra attacks. Hopefully you have sustained hits up as well, so you could really take advantage of that 3 damage. Also, they have Scout 6 innately, and their abilities are Beacons of Rage, which is an aura ability like I was talking about earlier to help out the Terminators and things like that. Really help out anything. The Exalted Eightbound as well. While a friendly World Eaters unit is within 6 inches of this unit, each time a model in that unit makes a melee attack, re-roll a wound roll of 1. If that attack targets a unit that is below half strength, full re-rolls of wound rolls. All right? Which is very strong. Most of the time, you're not going to do that, right? Unless it's a monster or character or something like that. But most units, if they're below half strength, they're probably already dead, to be honest with you. But very strong, very, very strong ability. They have a 5+ invul. And remember, I was telling you before, if you take the Demon Prince without wings, you can make that a 4+ invul and really guard all of your 8-bound units and Exalted Eightbound. That's the back of the datasheet card. Now on to one of my favorite units in World Eaters is the Exalted Eightbound. So they have the same movement, same toughness, same save, same amount of wounds and leadership and OC. What really changes with them is how well they hit and their strength in their weapons. So the 8-bound Chain Fist is 4 attacks on the charge, hitting on 3s, strength 15 on a charge, AP 3, 2 damage flat. So Knights, everything in the game, including the Lord of Skulls, is getting wounded on 3s by this, right? And if you procced that stratagem for the Skull Throne, you're wounding Knights and Lords of Skull on 2s. Really, really amazing. You can wound just about anything in the game on 2s. I don't think there's anything higher than toughness 13. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section. But you're wounding anything on 2s. Which means it's going to devastate and chew on anything that it hits, right? Also, you have the 8-bound Eviscerator, so it's 6 attacks on a charge, hitting on 2s. So this is where it makes a big difference between the regular 8-bound and the Exalted. These hit on 2s. They're strength 7, AP 2, 2 damage flat. Heavy Chain Glaive, like we talked about before. Nobody really uses these. If you want to use them and they're effective to you, let me know. Tell me in the comments section how you use them. But I can't find any efficiency for them, and I haven't really seen anybody run them to that extent. Unless, like I said before, right? There's a lot of horde going on in the game and 1-wound models. And then the paired 8-bound Chain Fist, which is twin-linked as well. So if you're already wounding on 2s to Knights, Lords of Skulls, things like that, high toughness, anything basically toughness 14 or lower on the charge, you're wounding on 2s and re-rolling any 1s for that. All right? And that's a bunch of attacks. It really depends. Some people like to use a fat brick of 6 of Exalted Eightbound, but they only get 1 paired Eightbound chain fist in there. I like to have some extra MSU units so I can get 2 paired Eightbound chain fists in there for the extra attacks, the extra strength, right? And the twin length. It's not super big. Maybe the unit of 6 is a lot better. I am 50-50 on it both, so it really doesn't matter and what I use, but let me know what is your favorite. They also have the Deep Strike ability and Feel No Pain 6-up, and they go down to a 5-up Feel No Pain when you use the Blessings of Kharn roll on them. Also, they have the Overwhelming Wrath aura. Each time an enemy unit within 6 inches of this unit is selected to fall back, that unit must take a leadership test. If that test has failed, that unit must remain stationary this phase instead, right? So you can really lock in units from trying to fall back. If you have those pesky Marines that are always trying to fall back with their detachment abilities, things like that, you can really lock them in. Remember, this is an aura ability, so it does not stack if you have multiple units, so you can only use this once. So it's only one roll that they ever have to do. They also have a 5+ Invo, and the DP Demon Prince without wings can make that to a 4+ Invo for more survivability. Back of the card. On to the next data sheet, we have the Land Raider. It's just like any other Land Raider. Has a 10-inch movement, toughness 12, 2+ saves, 16 wounds, leadership 6, and OC 5. Has a Soul Shatterer last cannon. 2 attacks, hits on 3, strength 12, -3 d6 +1. Combi weapons, combi bolters, havoc launcher, and twin heavy bolters that have sustain and twin linked. Also has the armored tracks. Remember, this goes up to 7 attacks on the charge if you decide to charge with it. Hitting on 4s, strength 9 on the charge, 0 AP, 1 damage. For abilities, it has obviously the Deadly Demise, and also has the Assault Ramp, which allows a unit to basically declare a charge after the Land Raider has moved. So this can be very helpful for getting your Berzerkers out there, touching things and destroying them with 50-odd attacks, 48 attacks if you're taking 2 Eviscerators, right? Not including a character if you have a character attached to him, depending if it's Kharn or the Mo. But you're going to get a lot of attacks, and you're basically going to delete anything that you're going to smack into. As always, it degrades, so 1 through 5 wounds, it gets a -1 to hit. This model has a transport capacity of 12 World Eater infantry models. Each 8-bound, Exalted 8-bound, and Terminator models take up the space of 2 models. So you can throw in there basically anything in the army except for like spawn that is infantry, right? So 8-bound, Exalted 8-bound, and Terminators, really, really good when you put Exalted and 8-bound in there. You can really destroy a lot of things, delete just about anything, especially if you shot it before you've ran in there and you have a close enough charge. All right, next up we have the Predator Annihilator. So this is just like any other Predator Annihilator. Nothing super special to this. The Annihilator abilities is each time this model makes a range attack, it targets a monster or vehicle, reroll a damage roll of 1. Armored tracks, as always. If you're charging anything with this vehicle, you're batshit crazy, but you can, and you can get up to 4 attacks on the charge. Hitting on 4s, strength 7 on the charge, AP 0, and 1 damage. As always, you have the Predator Twin Last Cannon, Heavy Bolter, Havoc Launcher, Combi Weapon, Movement of 10, Toughness 10, Save 3 up, Wounds 11, Leadership 6, and OC 3. So, not a lot of individuals use this, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to use this. If you find some value in this, maybe you wouldn't get into a very shooty type of World Eaters list, go ahead and use it. Try it out. Let me know in the comments section how you use yours, but I've never actually used one. I own one, but I've never actually used one in a World Eaters list. But just thinking about it, having like three of them, some Lords of Skulls, and some Maulerfiends or Forgefiends rather, for a full shooty army, and maybe just throw in and sprinkle Angron in there if he fits points wise. That can be pretty gnarly. Back in the data sheet. Then you have the Predator Destructor. Just like any other Predator Destructor, 10-inch movement, toughness 10, 3+ save, 11 wounds, 6 leadership, and OC3. So this one has a autocannon, rapid fire 2, blast cannon, heavy bolter, havoc launcher, and a combi weapon or a combi bolter. Armor tracks, like I was telling you before, if you're charging with this thing, you're a madman or a mad lady. But you can deadly demise D3. The Destructor ability is each time a range attack made by this model targets an enemy infantry unit, improve the armor pen of that attack by 1. So that can be pretty good if you're going just against, high resilient units, things like that, like Terminators, things with 3 wounds or less. So you can go up to AP2. If you've ever used this in your World Eaters list, or if you want to try it out, let me know how that ends up going for you. Back of the card. World Eaters Defiler. Just like any other Defiler. For melee, it's a little bit better in the World Eaters. It does have some shooting as well. For 190 points, I think it might be a little bit overpriced for a World Eaters army, especially such a elite army. But you could throw it in there, sprinkle it in there for some threat, right? Some shooty threat and some close combat threat. It does have the ability with its Defiler claws to have 6 attacks on a charge, hitting on 3, strength 17 on the charge, AP 3, D6 plus 1 damage. And then it has the Defiler Scourges, which is just extra attacks. So you only get 3 attacks because you can't benefit off of your Detachment Rule. Hits on 3, strength 12, AP 1, 2 damage flat. For its abilities, it has Deadly Demise D3. It has the Scuttling Walker. Each time this model makes a normal advance or fallback move, it can be moved over friendly monster and vehicle models as if they were not there. This model can move over terrain features that are 4 inches or less in height as if they were not there also. As always, this thing degrades as well. Has a 5+ invul save. Back of the card. Another great data sheet I wanted to bring up to you is the Forgefiend. A lot of people take this. It's not an auto-include, but when they take it, they auto-include the ectoplasmas. The ectoplasmas are amazing. I'm going to have another show that's going to come up very soon, and I'm going to show you where I run 2 of these. You can take up to 3 of the ectoplasmas. So you can have up to 3d3 attacks on that one Forgefiend. It's going to hit on 3, strength 10, AP 3, 3 damage flat. So you can really kill a lot of things in the game, especially higher damage models, things like that. You can really tech into monsters. So it's really, really good. High AP, high damage, and it allows people to really respect you, right? Because World Eaters usually don't have shooting. This is going to force people to respect you. So they're going to have to sit back, really get out of the way, hide behind walls, and cower, because you're either going to shoot them to death or you're going to destroy them in melee to death, right? So they're really, really going to respect you with these. I think they're really good right now in the meta, especially against Blood Angels. So we shall see. I'm going to try one out in a couple of days. And also, if you're going to do melee with this, which I think the Maulerfiend is better suited for melee, but if you want to do melee, you don't want to go full into weapons with the Forgefiend, you can take the Claws or the Jaws, which are not super amazing, but you can get some attacks out of it. The abilities is Deadly Demise D3. It has the Furious Onslaught in your shooting phase after this model has finished making its attacks. If one or more of those attacks scored a hit against an enemy infantry unit, that infantry unit must take a battle shock test, which is really good, right? So World Eaters have a slight ability to make you do battle shock and make you -1 in battle shock as well. So if you really want to tech into like the battle shock thing, like Tyranids, you can do that to a minimal. Not as much as Tyranids, but you can do that definitely with World Eaters. And as always, vehicles degrade, so 1 through 4 wounds remaining. You subtract 1 from the hit roll. It also has a 5+ invul, which is really good when having 12 wounds. You can put the feel no pain on it as well, so I'll have a 6-up feel no pain. You can -1 damage for incoming shots or melee attacks, things like that. So you can make this super resilient with this higher toughness. Not super high, but high enough where a lot of things are not going to be able to punch up, like Blood Angels. Blood Angels, chain swords are only strength 6. Power Fists are strength 10, but making them -1 damage to their 2 damage Power Fists can really help you out a lot. Here's the back of the card. Another data sheet that's one of my favorites is the Helbrute, because he gets an endless amount of close combat as long as he is within 4 inches of another unit. So, just like any other Helbrute in all of Chaos, right? It has the Combi Bolter, Heavy Flamer, Plasma Cannon, Missile Launcher, both Frag and Crack, the Multi-Melta, Twin Auto Cannon, Twin Heavy Bolter, and Twin Las Cannon. I usually don't take it with any of those except for the Multi-Melta. I think the Multi-Melta is most effective in this meta right now, especially it having 2 shots as opposed to 1 shot. Yes, it has a short range of only 18, but it's Melta 2, it's 2 shots, hitting on 3, strength 9, AP 4, D6 damage, hopefully D6 plus 2 for the Melta 2, right? And then for the second armament that I'm going to put on this other side is I usually always take the Helbrute fist on it. Sometimes I've thought about taking the Helbrute hammer, higher strength, higher AP as well, but it hits worse. It hits on 4s as opposed to hitting on 3s, and it has the same amount of attacks. And as World Eaters, when you charge in, you get that charging bonus. You go up to strength 13 anyway, so you're really wounding knights anyways on 3s, so it doesn't make a difference if you have a hammer, which is still going to wound on 3s, just higher damage potential, right? So I run mine with Multi-Melta and with the Helbrute Fist. But if you run yours differently, let me know. And if it's efficient and effective, let me know that too in the comments section. But I think that's the best way to kit them out. Abilities for the Helbrute is Deadly Demise 1. It also has the Frenzy ability, like I was talking about at the beginning when I introduced this data sheet. Each time an enemy unit targets this model after that unit has finished making its attacks, this model can either shoot as if it was your shooting phase, and this can only be used in the shooting phase, or fight as if it were your fight phase. It can only be used in the fight phase. All right. Most of the time, people plug this into horde armies and just do a daisy chain of just fighting everything within 4 inches, right? And you continue to fight. Every time they fight you, you continue to fight, and it's endless. Games Workshop has already determined this in the rules commentary section, where it's just endless and it continues to fight until you either die or you've killed everything you've been fighting into, right? So every time you're attacked, you get to fight. And you can just steamroll a bunch of units in your enemy's deployment zone if you do it just right. Also, if this model is equipped with 2 Helbrute Fists, those weapons have the Twin Link ability. Now, he has a 2+ save. He has no invul save. You can obviously do the Blessing for 6-up Feel No Pain, maybe helping out slightly with eating and chewing on wounds and things like that, but not so much. This one is actually a great data sheet, and I really like the Helbrute, especially at 130 points. Back of the sheet. This is an interesting one. I've never seen anyone actually use one. I own 0 of these Heldrakes. So I don't know how efficient it would be in game. I know I've tried it back in the days for Chaos, but I've never actually used it in the current or 9th edition World Eaters. But it has a 20-inch movement, toughness 9, save of 3 plus, 12 wounds, leadership 6, and no OC whatsoever. It has a Bale Flamer, which is D6 plus 3 shots. Auto hits because it's Torrent and ignores cover as well. Strength 6, AP 1, 2 damage. And also has a Hades autocannon. 6 shots, hits on 3s, strength 8, AP 1, 2 damage. Also has claws, which is anti-fly 2+, and devastating wounds. So you can really put on some damage to any flying units. Really pick out any of those birds in the sky with those dev wounds, especially if they fly, right? That you're going to do dev wounds on 2-ups, which is bananas. So if you ever try one of these, let me know. Those dev wounds on 2+ for anything that flies can be pretty gross, especially if you're going to get 6 attacks on the charge, hitting on 3s, strength 8, AP 1, 2 damage flat, right? And then those are going to convert into mortal wounds from dev. So that can be pretty good. It also has abilities where it's Deadly Demise D3 and it can hover as well. And it has Swooping Predator. Each time this model ends a normal move, you can select one enemy unit that is moved over during that move and roll 2d6. For each 4-up, the enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Lackluster, but it can kill a couple of things, right? You can kill up to, do six mortal wounds, maybe, kill off 3 models that has a couple of wounds each. Also, as always, vehicles degrade, so 1 of 4 wounds remaining. You subtract 1 from the hit roll, and it does have a 5-up invul save. Back of the card. Like we were talking about earlier, so the Maulerfiend. Maulerfiend is definitely the close combat variant of all of the Fiends. This thing can get quite amazing in close combat. It has the Magna Cutters if you decide to go a little bit shooty with it. But usually when I run my 2, I use the Lasher Tendrils and the Maulerfiend Fist. So the Tendrils are 6 attacks hitting on 3s, strength 8, AP 1, 1 damage on the charge. Because it's extra attacks, it doesn't go to 7 attacks, it stays at 6. And because it's the Maulerfiend Fist, and this is not extra attacks, you can get up to 7 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 15, AP 2, D6 plus 1 damage. So this can really wreak havoc on most things, right? Strength 15 is pretty bananas. If you can roll really well with your D6 plus 1 damage, you can really put a pain on anything. Monsters, vehicles, Titanic, whatever it might be, right? And also, on top of that, each time you make a charge roll for this model, if one or more of targets of that charge are below the starting strength, add 2 to that roll. So if you happen to have shot it with maybe a Land Raider or a Forgefiend or something like that, killed a model or 2, or put that character or monster below its starting strength, you're going to get +2 to the charge. And if it's below its starting strength, add 1 to the hit roll. This can really benefit you if you have Angron around, sustain hits, and that's usually what I try to do when I run 2 Maulerfiends. I try to put sustain hits up, advance and charge. Hopefully that's already turn 2 or turn 3, so I'm already close enough where I can charge and I don't need the +2 movement. So I just do the advance and charge and sustain hits. +1 to hit and Angron being around. So re-rolling full hits, hitting on 2s, re-rolling full hits, and it can really, really mess up a lot of things. It's an amazing unit. I think you should try it out. Really difficult to maneuver around the board on most layouts, but layouts 4 and 6 from Games Workshop can make it really easy for you to get in there very fast. And if they're using the proper terrain at the event, you should be able to maneuver out of all of those gaps and a lot of those center terrain pieces, right? So, amazing piece. I love using it. Go and try it out. You might like it too. As always, vehicles degrade, so 1 to 4 wounds remaining. It's -1 to hit. It also has a 5+ invul save. Back of the card. Next data sheet is the World Eater's Rhino, just like any other Rhino, right? Fire in deck 2, armor tracks, combi bolter, combi weapon, havoc launcher, nothing super special. Has a transport capacity of 12. The only thing that you really get is self repair. At the start of your command phase, this model regains 1 lost wound, which is pretty amazing. But it's standard, moves 12, toughness 9, 3+ save, 10 wounds, 6 up leadership, and 2 OC. If you're taking Berzerkers, you're either putting them in these or you're putting them in a Land Raider. But it's definitely an auto-occlude if you're taking Berzerkers with Kharn. Back of the sheet. It cannot transport 8-bound Exalted or Terminators, just so you're aware. Put Berzerkers in there. So one of my favorite data sheets in the World Eater's army is the Chaos Spawn. 8 movement, toughness 5, 4+ save, 4 wounds each, leadership 7, 1 OC. They have the hideous mutations. They don't have any type of shooting, just melee. In the charge, they have D6+3 attacks, hitting on 4, strength 7, AP 1, 2 damage. For abilities, they have the 5-up, feel no pain. If you have the blessing up, right, they got a 4-up, feel no pain. And they're pretty amazing if you put them on an objective marker and then sticky that objective marker with that stratagem. If you die off of it, that way you can still contain that. And they're highly resilient with that 4-up, feel no pain, right? Toughness 5, 4-up, feel no pain is nothing to skulk at, really. So try to use them for that. Try to use them to hold objective markers. Try to use them to get into different quarters and get you points, secondary points, and things like that. That's really their utility. They're fairly cheap at 65 points a unit of 2. I usually take at least 1 unit with me. They're almost an auto-occlude every single game that I play, and every army list that I build. So try them out. You'll really like them, and you'll really like the 4-up, feel no pain. They also have the regenerating monstrosities at the start of each player's command phase. Each player's, mind you, okay? 1 model in this unit regains up to D3 lost wounds. And that's every single command phase, even including your opponents, all right? You just keep on healing with that 5-up, feel no pain. So these suckers really don't die. It really takes a lot to kill them all. Here's the back of the sheet. Lord of Skulls is absolutely amazing. Has an 8-inch movement, toughness 13, 3+ save, 24 wounds, leadership 6, and 8 OC. So quite amazing piece. The high OC, first of all, right? That's pretty amazing. So you might kill a couple of models for an infantry battle line unit and take that objective from them just by yourself with a Lord of Skulls. He is very expensive at 350 points, obviously, and you can't take 3 of them, even though it is a meme list inside of a World Eater's army to take 3 of them. I've actually played against that same list with Angron, Jakhals, and I think that's all he had in there. Maybe a unit of Berzerkers. But that was definitely a meme list. He had 3 of them. It was a super challenge to kill all 3 of them before they can start shooting at you. And their shooting is very, very effective. So they can take the Demon Gore Cannon, 18-inch range, D6 attacks, hitting on 3, strength 14, AP 4, D6+2 damage. Or the Gore Storm Cannon, 24-inch range, D6+3 shots, hitting on 3, strength 10, AP 2, 3 damage flat. The Hayes Gatling Cannon, sustain hits on 1s, 48-inch range, 12 shots, hitting on 3, strength 8, AP 2 damage. The I-Core Cannon, 48-inch range, 2d6 shots, hitting on 3s, strength 7, AP 2 damage. And the Skull Hurler, which is just an awesome name, right? 60-inch range, so the entire table, okay? 2d6 shots, hitting on 3, strength 14, which is bananas, AP 3 damage flat. So these can really, really hurt you. They're a big threat range, and they scare the crap out of me on the tabletop, especially with 3 of them. They can really, really hurt, all right? Then we go into their melee. So they have the Great Cleaver of Kharn. The strike ability is 6 attacks on the charge, hitting on 3s, strength 17, AP 4, 8 damage flat. So they're killing just about anything. Your knights, bye-bye. If it goes right through, bye-bye, right? And just about every knight is going through, except for ones that have a 2-up save. And if you fail and you don't roll that 6-up, you're taking 8 damage for every one that goes through. On top of that, you can use that stratagem for +1 to wound, right? So you're basically wounding those knights on 2s, and you're going to ensure that you blow up that knight itself, right? You also have the Great Cleaver of Kharn sweep, 16 attacks on the charge, hitting on 3, strength 9, AP 2 damage flat. For core abilities, you have Deadly Demise D6 +2, so a big explosion. It also has the Blessed Slaughterer. Each time you make a Blessings of the Kharn roll, and this is my favorite one, for each enemy unit destroyed by this model, the previous battle round, you can add 1 or subtract 1 from one of the dice rolled. Each dice can only be modified in this way once, and the dice cannot be modified below or above 6. So if you really want to get Angron back, and you've killed a couple enemy units, right? And you rolled 1, 6, 2 5s, you roll 2 of them up to 6s, you got Angron back immediately. So this is why it's one of my favorite when it comes to Angron and resin him back. You can really manipulate the dice, and you don't have to re-roll it. You just either move it up or down, and you can get whatever blessing you want. As always, vehicles take a D grade. This one is actually at 1 through 8 wounds remaining, and it subtracts 1 from all hit rolls. It also has a 5+ invul. It's just an amazing piece. Try one out. They actually shoot very, very well. Tank shock is amazing. Not as good as it used to be, but still being toughness 13, you're still rolling 13 dice, which is pretty amazing. You're pretty much all the time going to get those 6s in there, or at least 6 mortal wounds in there, right? So, back of the card. And that's it, my people, for all of the data sheets. Thank you to everyone who watched all the way till the end and followed along with me. It was quite an adventure to go through the entire World Eaters Index, where I broke down a lot of my tips and tricks and how I use my World Eaters currently, right? I have multiple factions, but World Eaters is definitely one of my favorites. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for a couple days from now where I'm going to drop some more tips and tricks and an army list that's not going to go as long, okay? But I'm going to break down a couple army lists, tell you the synergies, the tips and tricks, and why I use the units that I use in those. And as always, don't forget Onslaught Gaming 40K, where victory is just a strategy away. Burn, maim, kill! Blood for the blood gods! Ah!